takeoff.
Awesome that you've got the Tomcat in the background and what is that, a manual of the Tomcat, how to build one?
Well, sort of. This was actually written by an Australian guy, and he just got real interested in it. And it's a great history of everything that went on at Grumman to build the Tomcat, arm it. There's all kinds of great pictures and history in here. It's also got all the statistics, how much did it weigh when it was first created? And when you got all the way to F-14D, what was the difference in weight one to the other?
Wow.
And great little stories. They got diagrams of missiles in here and wings back, wings forward. It's just a cool book. It was given to me as a present from my second son.
Awesome.
Next to the oldest son. So I keep it around because I know sooner or later you're going to ask me some quiz question. What did the left main gear of the F-14 weigh? And I'm going to go, I don't know, sir, but I'll find out. And I'm going to drag this book up.
Well, you did rip some gear doors off, which I want to hear that story as well. But we like to start chronologically on this channel. So you sent me a picture, which when I go and edit this stuff, I usually make these in the clips. When I go edit them, I'll put the picture up. But you actually got your start in flight simulators in 1960, right? Was that the picture you sent me of?
Yeah, but plus or minus, I was a little kid, I'm actually at that point, maybe like 5 years old, really. So it might've been earlier than 1960, but I guess my mother or somebody that knew me gave me a box, a cardboard box, and it said flight simulator on it. Or no, it actually said fighter pilot on it.
Yeah.
And I tore it out of there, and it was like a plastic instrument panel, and it came with a little plastic helmet and an oxygen mask with a hose.
Nice.
And I got in there and started being a fighter pilot, and I was, oh gosh, I think I had to be maybe like 6. So
that is
it
awesome.
was. Yeah, and years later, that's exactly what I ended up looking like. And back when I was actually flying the F-14, I had that same quizzical look on my face that I did when I was 6.
So at that point, I guess you knew this is what I want to be when I grow up. I'm going to be a fighter pilot. And is that kind of, did you go to college or the academy, or like what was your path to becoming that, to achieving that dream?
Well, I'll tell you honestly how it all started. I'm actually born in Scotland. I immigrated over here with my parents when I was about 6 or 7, came over on the Queen Mary. So some of my family started kind of following us over. So I had an older cousin who was living in the house with us for a little while. She had a job at Kennedy Airport. And so pilot guys started hanging around. She was a tall blonde, and I guess they were trying to see what they could locate.
Doesn't work.
And they kept running into the little brother. Well, actually, I was the little cousin, but they couldn't follow that because they were sort of concentrating on my older cousin. So anyhow, one of them was an airline pilot, and he said, "Hey, you want to go fly in an airplane?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And I was at that point, I would have been about 12, so I'm a little bit older now than the first thing we talked about. But he took me out to the local airport, put me in a Cessna 150, took me flying, put me back on the ground. I went, man, that's really cool. So I made an early decision, and I remember asking him, when can I start to take lessons, or when can I get a pilot's license? And he said, well, to be a student pilot, I think you have to be 16 and you be a private pilot at 17. And I had about 4 years to go. So I had a paper route. Nobody knows what that is, but back in the ancient days, there were little guys that used to run around, little boys like me, who used to deliver a newspaper to your door. So as 4 years went by on my newspaper route, and I went down to the local airport again. And by that time, they were just about closed down. I mean, the guy, you could tell they were on their last legs. So I walked into the office, and I said to the guy that owned it, I said, "Okay, I'm 16 now, and I want to learn to fly. How much does it cost to get a private pilot's license?" And the guy says, "Well, about $800." So I bring my sack, my canvas sack of rolled up coins and old dollars from 4 years of delivering newspapers, and I went boom on the desk. And I said, "All right, pal, there's $640 in this bag. If I pay you in advance, will that do it?" And he went, "Oh yeah."
What?
So that's how
awesome.
That's how I got my pilot's license. And then I went to college on a Navy ROTC scholarship. And when I was in college, I actually did quite a little bit of flying there. I worked at the local airport. There was a charter service there, so I'd fly from Ithaca, New York, down to Kennedy and back. Of course, I didn't have my commercial license, so I would just kind of fly along to observe. And sometimes the charter pilots would let me take the deadhead leg back. So I actually got about 140, 150 hours before I graduated college.
What college was it? Where'd you?
Cornell University, Ithaca, New York.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So ROTC. This is during Vietnam, right? This would be during Vietnam and stuff. So what was life like in that era, knowing that, you know, you're in the middle of a long drawn out war?
Yeah, well, at the time, Cornell is sort of an egghead school. I got in there by accident. You know, I won't even tell you that story. I really wasn't smart enough to be there, but they were not particularly politically active at the time. So there was a lot of ROTC units that, you know, there were demonstrations against the war and stuff like that. Frankly, we just didn't have any of that. I was sort of tracking the war at the time, and I could tell that even though it was still pretty active, it was obviously rolling off. You know, it was sort of going down. So anyway, that's by the time I went through training and got my wings and certainly got checked out in the combat in the Tomcat, the war had been over then by about a year and a half or 2 years. So I missed all of that.
So from ROTC, you got your pilot slot through ROTC, and then what was next? You went straight to flight school?
Yeah, so I got at the end of ROTC, and I remember that's a 4-year program, so there's 3 summers in the middle. So in the first summer, I was on some little destroyer or something and had to go over to you know, Honolulu on this thing. I was seasick. I hated it. So that was no good. So the next summer, you did half of that summer with the Marine Corps. So you'd have to get into an amphibious vehicle and land on a beach and do about 10,000 push-ups a day, and they'd wake you up at 5 in the morning to go running. So I said, okay, well, I'm not doing that. So the next thing, that isn't going to happen. So the next thing was called Aviation Indoctrination, and they gave us a ride in a T-34, and then I went to Kingsville, Texas. I was kind of lucky, and I got a ride in an A4 Skyhawk.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And, like a fighter, you know, with the real helmet on and the real oxygen mask on, not the goofy one. Right. And, you know, prior to that, I was thinking, well, maybe I'll go to S3s and be an airline pilot. I got one ride in the A4s. Screw that. I'm going to be a jet pilot. Yeah. And, you know, that's that. Then my last summer, I went on a foreign exchange to the Italian Navy and spent a lot of time on a cruiser, flying helicopters, getting to fly with the helicopter detachment that was on the thing, and had a great summer with the Italians. It was good.
That is awesome. So you graduated and then on to API, right? Back then, still called API.
Right. I kind of had a busy week. I graduated from Cornell on the 2nd of June. I went to my roommate's wedding. That was on a Tuesday. Went to my roommate's wedding. I think it was on a Thursday. I went to my own wedding on the Saturday. And then my wife and I got in a car and we drove basically to the Pentagon. They have a thing where it's called getting stashed. So, you know, everybody graduates in the spring. Not everyone can go to Pensacola in the spring. Right. So they've got to stick you somewhere for a while. So I was in a branch of the Pentagon, but just for a couple of months, and then bang, I went straight to Pensacola and started training from there.
What did you get your degree in? Did you?
Mechanical engineering, aerospace propulsion.
So yeah, you got the 20-pound brain from Cornell. Okay, smart guy, smart guy. All right.
No, I chose those because I knew I was going to have to pass a bunch of tests, and I wanted them to be easy. So, but the other thing too, I mean, and I know that younger people are perhaps going to be looking at this and think. I want to tell you a couple of things I did that turned out to be really smart. The Navy, the first thing they try to do, rather than make you a pilot, they try and make you a porpoise. They throw you in the deep end of a pool and they make you swim for hours on end because you're going to be at sea and they want you to be a great swimmer. So that's the first thing that happens. And then there's a whole bunch of apparatus like jet dunkers that fire you into the pool. And then there's helicopter things that drop you in the pool. And then they blindfold you and throw you in the pool. So there's a whole lot of that. And my college roommate, the one that got married on the Thursday, he happened to be on his swim team in high school. So my last semester at Cornell, he and I were in the pool every day, and he was teaching me how to swim sort of perfectly.
That's smart, yeah.
And I was generally getting into shape because there's the obstacle course, there's a couple of hard physical things. If you don't get through those, you're done. You spent your whole life thinking you're going to be a fighter pilot, and it turns out that you can't swim.
Yeah.
So to all you young folks out there that are thinking about doing this, you got to come prepared and you got to be in shape. And if you're going into the Navy, you better be a technically correct and very good swimmer.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. So you went to API where there's a lot of swimming. Was it a 1 mile swim in gear? Was the final test there?
That's right. You have to swim 1 mile with your flight suit on, and then there was a whole bunch of other things that we did. But because I was in shape at the time and I was really prepared for it, I actually enjoyed it. I enjoyed all of it. And I thought the training was very valuable. Bad cat shot, Tomcat dribbles off the end. You got to swim somewhere, man. You're about to get run over by an aircraft carrier. So it's a really good idea if you can swim,
Did your degree help you in API with the academics and stuff and your previous aviation background?
Yeah, it was, we had the tongue-in-cheek expression. I think perhaps the Air Force has the same one, but the first rule of air combat is to cheat. Yeah. That's the first rule. So I actually, although I didn't think it was that at that time, but getting that flight time that I had early in school, see a lot of kids now, I think I've got flight time. The academies even sponsor introductory flying before you even go to flight training. There was none of that in my day. So with 165 or 70 hours of flight time, I was I hope this doesn't sound immodest. It's just a fact. I was about 14 miles in front of my contemporaries, most of whom had never flown an airplane themselves. So I started killing the grades, right there. I was getting above averages and so on.
The halo
so
effect.
That really helped.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, and the Navy at the time, it was all competitive. So you finished primary training in the T-34. I was the top guy in the class. So they line everybody up, top guy, last guy. Okay, top guy. What airplanes do you want to go to? It was jets, props, or helos. Those were the three choices. And I said, I want jets at Meridian, Mississippi. They said, okay, off you go. So I walked out of the room. I don't know what the rest of it was.
Not my problem
I went
anymore.
back home to I went back home to the apartment and said, honey, pack your stuff. We're going to Meridian.
Did you have any aerobatic time in college or in flying, or was the aerobatic the first time in the T-34? And did you get sick or anything, or was it pretty much just, I'm used to this, let's go?
No, I never got sick, but I wasn't very good at it. I'd never done it before. And so I just wasn't, like in a barrel roll or something like that. I wasn't hitting all the points. I was a little bit annoyed with myself because I couldn't do it as well as I thought I should be able to. But it had never occurred to me that I was going to need to do that. And there was never available to me an aerobatic airplane that I could use.
Yeah. Okay. So from T-34s, what was the next aircraft for jet training?
Yeah, so I go to Meridian, Mississippi, and I'm going to sound like a cocky jackass. I'm gonna
You're a fighter pilot. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
You're a fighter guy. Go on.
Well, so we go to Meridian, Mississippi, and the first airplane that I'm going to be in is the T2 Buckeye, which is actually a pretty decent airplane. So we get there, the first day, my wife and I find an apartment to stay in, and I'm walking to this great big hangar. And the whole, I think there were 3 training wings there. So there's about 4 or 5 squadrons. They're all in this one great big hangar. So you go through the door in the front, there's offices, there's classrooms. And then as you go through the hangar, there's maintenance, and then you're out on the ramp and there's all the airplanes. But before you go through the big door, those railroad tie concrete things that are at the front of a parking spot.
Yeah.
So I went there first day, and I'm looking at the concrete things, and one of them says Admiral so-and-so, Training Wing 3, and the next one says Captain so-and-so, Commander, Training Squadron, this or that. And there's about 4 of these things, and I get down to the last one, and the last one says Student of the Month.
Oh.
I went, oh, there's a competition here.
Yeah.
So this is awful, but I figured, man, I'm just gonna be a pain in the ass. I'm gonna make a mark here. So I ran to a model shop, and I got a stencil, and I went around on the other side of the concrete thing, the one that you see when you walk out the door.
Yeah.
And I stenciled my name on it.
Oh, no way. That is awesome. That's awesome.
But see, I knew it wasn't really a brag, because I knew I had this extra training, and I should be better. I should be better. Well, we were there for a full year, and I never gave up that parking spot. So
that is awesome. That is awesome. So in the T2, is that the first time you go to the boat?
Yes. Yeah.
How was that experience for someone who'd been flying before to try to land?
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to back up just a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
First experience in the boat, and I want the young folks here to understand what's going to happen or potentially happen. So when you first get into a jet airplane, you're in this very strange environment. You've got a G suit on that you've never had on before. They get you in there and they strap you into an ejection seat. And the first thing you think to yourself is, man, I hope this thing doesn't go off by accident. And then they put an oxygen mask on your face, and you have to remember to turn the oxygen switch off or you're going to gag right there. And then they put on a helmet and gloves and a flight suit and, all these other things. And there were several people in the class that they were uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
And then when the airplane got airborne, frankly, they started puking because they were nervous. And for some reason that I can't quite explain, I was thrilled. I felt like the Navy gave me this helmet to protect my brain, and then it gave me this oxygen mask so that my mind would work, even if we were in thin air. And this G suit's going to keep blood where it's supposed to be, so my eyes work right. I took the whole thing on as like a knight in shining armor on a big horse, and they'd given me all this great stuff, and so I never had air sickness or any of that, but honestly, I think it was purely attitude. So, again, if you ever end up in a situation like that, embrace it and go for all that stuff. Costs a lot of money.
Absolutely.
And it's to keep you safe, so that helped me a lot, and kind of off I went. I love the T2. And then to answer your question, after a number of months, they said, okay, we're going on a det. That's a detachment.
Yeah.
We're going to fly down to Pensacola, and then we're going to go out and land on this old World War II aircraft carrier called the Lexington.
Oh, wow. So
we're all kind of nervous, but of course, before you do that, you do like several weeks of bounces, which is, these are touch and goes with an optical mirror set up to the side of the runway with LSOs watching and talking, that's landing signal officers, watching you and talking to you and grading every one of your passes so that your approaches. So a debrief might be a little too high at the start, overpowered, fast in close, touchdown long, or bolter, so they break down your pass into each one of those things. And over the couple of weeks that you are building up to this CQ thing, you want those grades to be more like okay, okay, pass, and then like not complimentary, but reports that are within the parameters that you're supposed to be in. So you don't just go flying out to a boat and land on it.
Right.
You go through weeks of training at the field, and then you go down to Pensacola. And by the way, and I think probably most of you know this, there's nobody in the back seat with you when you go to the boat, because they can't pay anyone enough to do it. When you go to the boat on your first airplane, the T2 in my day, you're by yourself in the front seat.
Yeah.
Just you, yourself, and nobody else.
It's just you.
Looking at this boat thing, and you're going, oh man, I hope they knew what they were doing when they trained me how to do this.
That is awesome.
But it's only 4 traps, 4 passes. Boom, catch up, boom, catch up, boom, catch up. The 4th one, Mullen, you're qualled. Your signal is bingo. That means fly back to the base. So I flew back to Pensacola and went to the nearest bar and got drunk.
That's awesome. Was it an O Club or was it off base?
Off base.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
off base.
Okay. All right. So from the T2, there was actually another trainer in between, right? That was before, just 2 trainer tracks. You actually went to was it the TA4?
Exactly. So what I just described is called basic jet. Primary is when you're in the T-34. Basic jet is what I just described. Then you go to advanced jet in my day, which was the TA-4J, which is, that is a Vietnam War airplane.
Yeah.
Just the trainer version, meaning that it had 2 seats in it. Other than that, it's a combat capable airplane, tremendous roll rate. I loved it. I thought it was a great airplane to fly, good flying airplane, good fun. Then, I'm sorry. What
no. Go ahead.
But then there's this unfortunate little thing that starts to creep in about this part of your career, and it's called overconfidence. So again, I was having fun and I was flying a good airplane, and I remember this particular flight, till the day I die. It still aggravates me, but so for any of the folks out there that are thinking that they might want to be a pilot of any kind, airline pilot, military pilot, doesn't matter. The 2 most important things that you have got to do, and you've got to understand, the 2 most important things. First, come prepared. Mm-hmm. You have got to read everything you can possibly read. And then you've got to get the gouge. And people in the Navy, gouge is like the inside information. Yep. So if one of your pals or somebody at the bar in the O Club, if they had their first ride on the TA4 yesterday, you're going to go up to them, buy them a beer and say, hey man, you got any gouge for me? Yeah. And that's I'll tell you what I had a problem with. I'll tell you what went well, etc. So all of that is the preparation phase. You got to do all of that before you walk into the briefing room. But then once you get in the airplane comes the second thing you have to do. And that's what I call think while flying. And it's easy to, kind of get lulled to what the instructor kind of tells you what to do, and you just kind of do it. No, you can't be like that. You have to believe that you are the pilot in command of that airplane, and the instructor is there just to keep you safe.
Yep.
So you've got to think and try the whole way through. So my worst sortie in the A4, and again, a little overconfidence. I was doing well, and it was a low level navigation flight.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to be 500 feet above the ground, and we're going to have a little strip map, and we're going to try and find various points and fly this big round robin around the area around Meridian. So and the instructor for this was the most admired instructor on the base. He was an A6 guy, dropped a lot of bombs in Vietnam. Yeah. He was a warrior. He was a cool guy, and I wanted, by that time, frankly, I had a little bit of reputation of being a good student, and I really wanted to impress this guy. Mm-hmm. So I had all my maps. I had done all my stuff. I thought I was prepared. We're walking out to the airplane, and he turns to me. So I said, 15 knots from the north. He just made it up, And the guy's looking around and goes, gee, that's strange, because every airplane in the pattern out here is landing and taking off to the side. So busted, and we took off, and I got biblically lost. I mean, lost like, like part of the Red Sea, 40 years in the desert. I wandered around Mississippi and I never did figure it out. So my instructor has to kind of give me some vectors to go back to the base. But here's a very important thing. So now I'm as angry with myself. I'm going to go home. I'm going to slit my throat and bleed to death on the front lawn. That's what I'm going to do. But right now I'm still in this airplane. I'm going to fly the goddamn thing. So as we're flying back into the pattern, one of the students, either the control tower or one of the students got confused in the traffic pattern entry thing. And we had sort of like a possible midair or near miss situation. I realized what was going on because I'm still engaged in this thing. And I can't remember what it was, but I either said something to the other airplane or to the tower that resolved this little thing. And then we come around to land, and every Navy runway has got that lens or mirror thing that you have on the carrier. It's just sitting right there for you to practice. Well, I flew as tough, as hard an approach as I possibly could, and I landed on center line, on the ball, exactly where I was supposed to be. Then I got out of the airplane and I went into the men's room and cried because I was just so mad at myself, But so what happened there, and there's a moral to the story. When we go to debrief it, there's a grade sheet, and it was above average, average, below average, and unsat. And I'm thinking, well, if I don't get an unsat out of this thing, I'm going to be really lucky. So I got below average on pre-flight planning because I never did call the weather guys. I just forgot. Right. I got below average in in-flight navigation because I got lost biblically, right?
Yep.
But then I got an above average for head work because I unscrewed the pattern thing, and then I got an above average for landing. So wow. Even though it was the worst hop of my life, now the whole point of this little story is never quit flying the airplane. Go home and hate yourself and beat yourself up, but never do that in the airplane. You have got to fly all the way back to the ramp, shut the engine down, climb out like a man or a woman, and then go cry. That's awesome. But anyway, I sort of pulled it out, and that'll happen a lot in the airline world. I was a check airman for FedEx, and we make mistakes. And if I was doing initial operating experience for another pilot or whatever, I just love to see a man or a woman that just doesn't quit and keeps flying and keeps it safe. So that's for you young guys out there, young girls. Please remember that, we'll beat ourselves up when we get back to the bar, but never in the plane.
Yeah. And we've just talked about that in a previous mishap. The same thing happened in an F-16. So that's definitely really good to take home. So after the TA-4, how did you drop to the Tomcat? Like, how did you get from, flying TA-4s to the mighty Tomcat?
Well, again, it's competitive. So you fill out a preference sheet. So the preferences were F-14's East Coast, F-14's West Coast, F-4's East Coast, F-4's West Coast, A-7s. Whatever, all the different Navy airplanes. And so the top of my preference sheet was Tomcats East, because our family was mostly on the East Coast, and I was the top guy. So it was a line of one. They said, okay, you're going to Tomcats BF 101 at Oceana, Virginia. And I said, thanks very much. And back home to the wife again, pack your bags, throw them in the car, off we go. So at that point, you go to what the Navy calls the RAG, which stands for the Replacement Air Group. The Air Force calls the Formal Training Unit, I believe, the FTU. It's the same thing. So that's your transition from you at that point. By the way, I left out an important thing. Right at the end of that A4 training, they put on your wings of gold. So now you are actually a naval aviator, and you're going to go to your fleet airplane. And that's another whole deal.
Was the Tomcat your first choice because it was brand new at the time, or did you have a location? Like, what made you choose Tomcats over F4s?
Okay. There was the Navy at the time, they periodically will fly fleet airplanes into the training bases just to let the students kind of crawl around and look in the cockpit and all of that. And the Tomcat was the sexiest airplane that,
Yeah.
it was gorgeous. I mean, it's right behind me up here. It was just an unbelievably beautiful airplane, and it was big and powerful looking and sexy as all hell. And, that's what I wanted to go to. So, and again, you kind of trickle down the order, but I was lucky to be at the top. So that was
So, so you go to Oceana, and what was it like? The mentality shifts, right? Now you're a rated aviator, and this is your first time with a Rio. So what
right.
was it like transitioning to that mindset and flying the Tomcat for the first time?
Miserable.
All right. Fair
It
enough.
was miserable.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And part of it was it was expectations, man. I'm going to the coolest airplane in the world. I have to be one of the coolest guys in the world. I mean, so everything's going to be cool and I'm going to have a great time. No, that didn't happen. I got my wings in December. So when I got to Virginia Beach, it's winter. The water temperature in the Atlantic is like way cold.
Suits. Yeah.
So poopy suits. So poopy suits are you can guess it's an exposure suit that you put on. It's extremely uncomfortable. It's got a rubber neck seal. It's got seals down at your feet. It cuts off all the blood to your brain for hours at a time. It's the most uncomfortable thing you can imagine. So we get into the F-14, and all of my hopes and dreams were kind of crushed because these are early model F-14s. And they had a lot of problems. I mean, just starting the airplane up was a drill. They're down on, if you can imagine, to the right of your right calf and to the left of your left calf, there was rows of circuit breakers down there. So you would get the airplane, you'd get the engine started because we had gone through the ground school and all that. And we've got a Rio in the back, a radar intercept officer, not a pilot. So we'd start the thing up and there's all these warning lights and, this says the hydraulic pump isn't working and this said that the missile won't tune and all kinds of stuff. And the Rio back there, he's got the cheat sheet, so he says, all right, pull circuit breaker 3-2. So you lean forward to do it and that neck seal, like that, you have to pull it out, reset the circuit breaker. It was the most uncomfortable, miserable experience. And I was so disappointed. I mean, I thought the airplane was going to be perfect. Well, there were some very good airplanes right behind it, but these were the early models. Yep. And at the time I was disappointed. And then the other great change of mindset is, for the last, year and, more than a year and a half, I was flying with instructor pilots.
Yep.
And when I would do something well, they would appreciate it and I'd get a good grade for it. And when I did something bad, they would tell me about it. You're flying with Rios that came from the fleet. They expect you to be a pilot. You've got your wings on. So they're impossibly difficult to impress. I mean, they just, okay, so you fly a good airplane. You're supposed to fly a good airplane. You're in the fleet, you idiot. So I wasn't getting the gratification that I was used to. The airplane was difficult. The suit was uncomfortable. It was just a big transition, and that was that. But
wow.
It was difficult.
But lighting the blower first time, in that thing had to be amazing.
It was fantastic. But another thing happens there, as you know, if the airplane's going even in a little bit of a descent, you plug the blower in, the airplane's going to start going very fast, very, very quickly. Now to get the nose back up above the horizon, you've got to not only pull on the stick, but more importantly, you've got to take the stupid thing out of burner. So there was a lot of learning things there. One time I did get myself stuck going down very fast, scared the living crap out of the Rio. Did manage, did manage to remember to, to recover. But, all those great grades and all those pats on the back and all that Mr. Number One crap evaporated, like 1 week, it was all gone. I was just another dude on the flight line, and it was, but it was good for me. It was really good for me. Humility is a good thing. You don't want to be too cocky in an airplane. So, so that was great.
So dogfighting it for the first time, taking it out and actually fighting either versus another Tomcat or another aircraft. I mean, how did you feel? That was back when it was having compressor stall issues and all kind of engine issues, right? I mean, you could easily get yourself into trouble.
Absolutely. You had to be kind of tender with throttles when you were moving the power back and forth. The other thing that I did not have in my scan from the training command was all Navy airplanes have an angle of attack gauge, and that tells you the angle of incidence of the air, how it's hitting the leading edge of the wing. So the Tomcat, the F-14A, was not as powerful as the later model. The A plus and the D had completely different engines. So this airplane that I flew, was actually a little bit underpowered. And so one of the instructors would be in, guess my old pal, the TA4.
Oh.
And now I've got to fly 1v1 in the Tomcat against the TA4. And the expression of time is you get your fangs out. You pull the airplane a little too hard in the turn. You get the angle of attack higher than where it's supposed to be. Next thing you know, you've bled all the energy off the airplane and you get your butt gunned by an A4, which I just graduated from that. And now they're kicking my ass in this thing in the F-14. The whole thing was just, God, what a transition, It's just a very difficult year.
Was it tough, the crew coordination with having somebody in the back now telling you, jink or whatever? I'm always single seat, so whatever it is they do back there, was it tough to transition to actually work as a team to employ the aircraft?
Well, the RAG instructor Rios were very experienced guys that, had just come to shore duty. They'd been out in the fleet for a long time. They were very skilled. They knew what they were doing. They were good instructors and they were good on the radio. Later on, when I was in the fleet myself, now you've got new Rios back there. And, the expression, the very unkind expression that we use sometimes was, I'd rather have the 1,500 pounds of gas that those guys have taken up back there because they just weren't that good. So the way I would say it is, a good Rio is worth its weight in gold. Absolutely, save your life a dozen times. Fantastic asset. But somebody in the back that doesn't have the situational awareness that you really need, they can become a distraction. But again, but that's your obligation now. That's the way the Navy works is, all right, you're the senior guy. You don't just fly a good airplane. You have to teach other people to fly better, and you have to teach your Rio what you need and work with your crew to become effective. So it was a challenge sometimes, but at the end of the day, I enjoyed it, and I had some great Rios.
Now your Rios and instructors were all Vietnam era fighter pilots, right? This is in the mid to late 70s, so you're talking guys that have actually just come back from multiple combat tours.
That's generally true. If I were in the West Coast RAG, that would be true, because that's where all the Vietnam guys were. Being an East Coast sailor, some of them had been to Vietnam. The majority, I would say, had not. Certainly not in the Tomcat. So that was a mixed bag. But as an East Coast guy, we didn't get all that Vietnam experience that we would have. The West Coast was, they were Vietnam crazy. That's all they ever talked about. That's what they drank about. That's what they excelled at that, ultimately. And when I went to Top Gun later, as an instructor and, really got into that West Coast group, that's when that was another whole experience, totally different experience. and great war stories, great lessons learned.
So graduating the RAG, where did you go from there? What was your first fleet squadron?
So at that point, there was some negotiation going on because, you know, I came from Meridian. There was another pilot in my class. There's only 2 pilots in my class, and there was about 4 Rios for some reason, student Rios. So I came from Meridian, and this other guy was, he was a Naval Academy graduate. I'm just going to call him John. Okay.
Okay.
Because some people would recognize this whole situation, but he was kind of a goofball. You know, he was originally from Texas, and you know, he always kind of acted like a cowboy or something. He drove a motorcycle, and one day he ran it off the road and showed up for a brief covered in mud and muck and stuff. So, you know, I just didn't know what to make of this guy, but I thought he was just trouble. So we get down to taking our final written exam in the F-14. So the airplane part's easy. It's the missiles. You know, we've got Sidewinders on there. We've got Sparrows. We've got Phoenix missiles. We've got a pulse Doppler radar and a very powerful one. So there's a whole bunch of things that you need to know about the weapon system in the airplane, and you need to know all the stuff. So there's only 2 pilots in my class, myself and this guy, John. And we get down to the big, you know, exam. And I've been to Cornell, and I've got the degree and all of that. So I get like a 95 or maybe a 94 or a 95 on this test. Well, Goofy John gets a 99.
Oh, wow.
Oh, sandbagging, is it? You're a damn sandbagger. all this stuff with the motorcycle and all that goofy crap. He was just suckering me the whole time. You know, I thought, oh, you bastard, you know. So that was but we know we're going to get picked for one squadron or the other. That was at the time was looking, and the one squadron was the F-84, the Victories. And the other squadron was VF-14, the Top Hatters. So that they go all the way back to World War I. So one of them is going to get John, and one of them is going to get me. So it sort of boils down to our carrier landing. When now we have to CQ in the F-14, and I was myself and my Rio. We were the first all Nugget crew, both student crews to CQ in the F-14. So we're building up to that. We're bouncing, and there's a simulator in one of the buildings that was called a carrier landing simulator. So it was really a development device. It wasn't certified yet or anything. So you climb into this thing. It's pitch black in there. You can barely see this little representation of a ship. The control loading was terrible, sticks flopping all over the place. So of course you would fly into the water, you'd fly into the back of the boat, you'd fly into the island. I mean, you just could not land this thing. It was absolutely impossible because it wasn't done yet. I mean, it was just a work in progress. So anyway, we get down to, we're getting closer and closer to going to the boat. So I'm sitting in this little simulator one night, and I crashed like 5 times in a row, you know, and I'm just looking around and I'm just disgusted, you know, and I look around and I see this little button down or switch on the side, and forward is auto throttle, and that was the same as the airplane. But if you move the switch back, it just said auto.
Oh, wow.
Auto what, you know? So I had nothing else to do. So I moved the little switch back. Well, it was auto land. There was no auto land in the airplane that, you know, that hadn't been developed yet. Nothing like that existed. But in this goofy little developmental simulator, if you went auto, 3-wire, auto, 3-wire, 3-wire, 3-wire. So I go, oh, wow, this is interesting. So I go back to the O Club. And who's there at the bar but John, my adversary here. And he says, man, how you feeling about going out to the boat? We're going out to the boat the next day. So how you feeling about that? And I said, well, I was really, really nervous about it, but I've been spending a lot of time in that carrier landing simulator, and I'm getting better at it. He says, "Oh, bullshit! That thing doesn't even work. Nobody can land that thing." I said, "Well, I can. I'm getting pretty good at it." She goes, "You're lying." I said, "All right, well, let's walk down." So it's like, I don't know, less than a quarter mile. We walk down to the little simulator building. He's sitting at the console. He can't see what's going on inside the cockpit. So I get in there. We start it up. Auto, 3-wire. He goes, "How'd you do that?" I said, "Well, man, you just got to be really smooth. You can't over control it. You just have to fly the plane." So I go, like 3 straight, 3 wires in this thing. He says, "All right, let me get in there and try that." So we swap out. He hits the ocean, hits the back of the ship, hits the island, climbs out of the thing in disgust and goes home. So I'm thinking, wow, what a great pimp that was. I mean, that was perfect, So I go into the squadron the next day, and this is when we're supposed to, go out to the ship. And you know how squadrons are. When you walk in the front door, sometimes you just get an atmosphere of, there's a little crackle in the air or something, something's wrong or something's different. So I'm looking around, and the whole place seems like hushed, And one of my Rio friends comes up to me and says, "Hey, do you hear about John?" I said, "Well, what about?" He said he quit. He threw his wings on the commanding officer's desk, and he said he's not going to the boat because he thinks he's going to die. So, so now I'm busted, so now what do I do? And somebody else says, and there was some talk about you and him being in the carrier landing simulator, the other night, and he's just all bummed out and disgusted.
Holy crap.
So the skipper of the squadron, he drags me into his office and he says, "I don't know what you did, but you're coming clean right now. We got $1 million invested in John, and here's his wings right here on my desk. Now, what did you do?"
Holy wow!
So I gotta fess up the whole thing, and anyway, he gets his wings back and off we go to the boat. But I don't know. It's just one of those Navy things, It's
that is awesome.
It was so funny now, but he turned out to be, after he got over his little nightmare, he turned out to be a great pilot, and he went on to good things. So
wow.
Anyway, that was we called it a pimp. When you pimp somebody, you got a really good one on them. So.
That is awesome. Damn, that's a good story. So he CQ'd though. He had no problems.
He did. He did. He CQ'd, and so did I. So the squadrons chose who they wanted. VF-14 took him. VF-84 took me. And then the Rios were divided up mainly to VF-84 because the top hatters didn't need that many. And so I was assigned to USS Nimitz and VF-84, and that was my fleet squadron. And that was another huge transition. Huge.
How so? What was the big transition? Just the mentality of going from training to this is real, and what? So, cage us in what time frame this was, and what was the big threat you were training for at this time?
Russians, Soviet threats, Soviet backfire bombers, that kind of thing. That was the threat. That's what the AIM-54 Phoenix missile was designed to take down. Mm-hmm. And I got my wings in 76, so this would be in 77. This would be about a year later. So, and we're getting ready to deploy to the Mediterranean in the Tomcat. But something very important happened. At that time, I was explaining about how there was so many problems with the airplanes with circuit breakers, and they had leading edge maneuvering slats, but they were manually operated. And in the middle of an air combat engagement, you could never remember where you had them, up or down or whatever. So they came out with the Block 95. So we were flying Block 65 F-14s at the time. And right when I went to the squadron, they came out with the Block 95, which was a huge advancement in the F-14. And we were picking them up at Grumman. We were flying up there, picking up new airplanes and bringing them back to Oceana. So they had automatic maneuvering flaps and slats.
Mm-hmm.
So in your fight, it was keeping track of the angle of attack and the airspeed, and it would make the wing softer, more lifty.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were going faster, it would retract all that stuff and make it cleaner and less drag. So it was a much better airplane. So that was good.
Yeah.
And so we deployed on, we flew out to Nimitz and went down to, I think it was Fort Lauderdale on a workup. Came back from that, did another sort of thing, and then we left for the Med. Went to Rota, Spain. On our first deployment.
Did you do any dissimilar in the Tomcat against other fighters, BFM or dogfighting?
Whatever we could find. So F4s were, that was a well-flown F4 is difficult. He flies a different fight than you do. He's going a lot faster. It's a much higher energy fight. We were a more pointy nose position fight. So we're trying to intimidate him with the nose, and he's trying to get us into a low energy situation so we can go up and then come down.
Yeah.
So and every aspect of those two possible modes were done. There were also some Air Force guys over at Langley, and the F-15 was just brand new F-15s were coming out. So we were fighting the Langley guys, and of course the F-15 was a better airplane, frankly, than the F-14. So they were a handful, very difficult, but a great adversary to fly against. Of course, the first time they sent the F-15, out to the carrier to land, it ripped all the gear off. So that was, so they weren't as good as we thought.
Wow. So, I mean,
I'm just saying that they didn't go to the ship. That's all.
Right. Yeah. It's frowned upon in the F-15. You can do anything once, though. I mean, once or twice. Did you have issues with like overg in the jet and getting flaps stuck in positions or anything? I mean, this was back when the jet first came out, so the G limits were a little higher than it eventually was, right? What kind of G's and thrust to weight and all that stuff did you have back then?
6.5 positive and about 4 negative.
Did you ever do 9 or 10? I've heard of guys going out. I didn't care what the G limits were. I just pulled for whatever I had. I mean, was it still a pretty big deal to overg?
Yeah, a year later, I went out to Top Gun as a student, and in a Top Gun class engagement out there, I put 8.4 Gs on the airplane, not intentionally, but I was just sick of losing. So I decided to do something different. So I put 8.4 on the airplane. So that's almost a full 2G overstress. And maintenance and me and whoever else was interested, the Rio that was with me, we went all over that airplane and mover. I'm telling you, there was not one rivet out of it. There was not one crease in any of the panels.
Yeah,
you couldn't find anything wrong with that airplane. Grumman overbuilds an airplane like you can't believe.
That's awesome.
So I think that airplane could have been flown routinely to 9 Gs and it wouldn't have bothered it.
Yeah.
But of course, you're bleeding so much energy there, you're not going to be at 9 Gs for long.
Right. So was your first assignment where the Nimitz that you actually filmed Final Countdown? Is that leading into that? Did you go to Top Gun first, or what was the?
Okay, so no, first cruise. We get on the boat, we go over to Europe, and the first cruise was all the Mediterranean stuff. So we were in Rota, Spain. We were in Naples in Italy. Later on another thing, we were over in Athens. We went to some of the ports in North Africa, and some of the wives seagulled. So seagullling behind, how seagulls fly behind the ship. Mm-hmm. Well, some of the wives, including mine, would come over, and let's say that we were in Naples and we were going to go out to sea for a week or two, and then we would be coming into Venice. Well, one of them had bought a car for European delivery. So there were like 3 wives in the car, and they would go to a couple of pensions and do some sightseeing, and they would meet the ship at the next port.
Oh, nice.
So that was called seagoing.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. And then I took some leave over there, and my wife and I had never had a honeymoon because I just kept going to Navy things all the time. So while we were over there, we took our honeymoon and went to Switzerland and, Liechtenstein, and rented a car and drove all around Europe, and it was fun. It was good, except for one thing. I was Lieutenant JG, so neither one of us had any money. I'm serious.
Yeah,
None of the junior officers, we didn't have any money. We had enough money to pay our mess bill, and like maybe go buy a beer once. It was poverty. It really was. But on my second cruise, then I was a full lieutenant. Doesn't sound like much, but it's considerably more money. But we got sent to the Indian Ocean, so there was nowhere to spend it. So that's kind of the way the Navy works.
Well, so in the late 70s, what was the atmosphere of the fighter pilot? I mean, were you? I mean, did people know about fighter pilots in general in the public and stuff? What was it? Was it trending towards? I mean, were you rock stars, or did that come much later into the 80s as far as public perception of the average fighter pilot?
Well, the public, I don't think they had any idea really what we did. We were not, it was nothing like anything you saw in the movie, Top Gun. It was nothing like that. But internal to the ship, everything is graded. I mean, every landing is graded. Every exercise off the ship, somebody's watching you. And again, the LSOs, of course, are tracking all your landing grades. So that we had what was called the grade 8. It was carrier air wing 8. So at the end of each line period, when we come into port, actually, when we went out from an in-port call, they'd look at everybody's landing grades, and the top 8 pilots in the air wing, were brought up to, this was all done in the forecastle, which is a big room up in the bow of the ship. And they'd get a plaque and a big, applause and all that stuff. So there was a lot of competition within the ship. And frankly, it was annoying because the A7 guys, they had an easier airplane to land. They really did. The F-14 was called the Turkey because it just didn't look good. There's a bunch of flapping control surfaces out there. And the LSOs would say that, and they would say something stupid like, well, you over-controlled it a little bit. No, I didn't. I kept the airplane where it was supposed to be. That's what it looks like when you land it. You get in it and land it, So there's all those kind of arguments in the ready room. But there was a lot of competition in the ship.
Wow. Okay. So then you came back from that cruise. Was that, you're a lieutenant now, and is that kind of pre-Top Gun, but in that downtime, is that when you came home and they said, hey, we got a good deal for you. You want to go down to Key West?
No, not yet. So Top Gun's a school. So, I'm lobbying the whole time. As soon as I found out anything about it, I'm starting to, talk to the commanding officer and the operations officer and say, hey, I'd like to go through Top Gun as a student. So when I got back from that cruise, within a month or so, I was headed out to Miramar, and I went through the Top Gun class as a student.
Yeah.
Right? So that was that. And then when you come back to the ship, you have a training job. You're kind of like the air-to-air training person, to bring the most recent information that you learned at Top Gun. You're expected to deliver that back to the fleet. So I came back to do that job. And I was like one day into being the new, Top Gun representative, and they said, "Forget all that crap. We're going down. We're going down to Key West to film a movie." I said, "A what? A movie?" I just spent 6 weeks of my life learning to fly this airplane better and what the missiles will do and everything else, and now we're going to go make a movie. So that's when the movie was made. It was right before our second cruise.
Oh, so okay. Well, then in Top Gun, this is pretty early on in Top Gun's history, right? I mean, you're probably in some of the early classes, especially for the Tomcat in general. What was kind of the emphasis? Like, was it more BFM or just trying to employ beyond visual range and trying to learn that? And how hard was it?
Well, first of all, what you call BFM, we call 1v1. It's exactly the same thing. It's one airplane against another. That was emphasized initially very strongly. They had to make the Top Gun staff had to make sure that you were flying your airplane correctly and to the limits, and that you were safe before they added any more complications. So we started out with 1v1 work against the instructors, against the F5s and all of that. You kind of make a reputation doing that. Very, very frustrating. Those guys are just too good. You know, they're too good. It's not a fair fight, even though you're in the F-14 and the new one. I found that difficult. And then, of course, the Rios are learning too. And at the same time, when you go to the lecture set, they're talking about using the AIM-54 missile and the AUG-9 weapon system to detect Russian bombers and protect the carrier battle group. So there's kind of two things going on, and that's the strategic employment of the airplane, and then there's the very basic tactical employment of the airplane. The pilot's got to, they both crew members have got to be good at both things. So it was a hard 6 weeks. It was a lot of learning, and but it was a lot of fun too. And I loved San Diego, and I liked the atmosphere out there. And
was it? So were you paired with your Rio from the fleet? And
yep.
was it a competition as everything else had been, or is it more you're here to learn, we got to get you through this?
Yeah, everything, almost everything that was in the Top Gun movie was just horseshit. It just wasn't that way. Yeah. But on the other hand,
what about the O Club? Was the O Club fun like that too?
The Miramar O Club on a Wednesday. Now, Miramar was a Wednesday night O Club. Oceana was a Friday night O Club. The Miramar O Club on a Wednesday was awesome. It was just great. And, you know, in those days, it was a very permissive society. I'm not defending this or anything. I'm just telling you what it was like. But, you know, the strippers in the back bar, they were naked, man. There was no pasties or any of that stuff going on. It was just basic stuff. And
did they bus? Did they really bus women in, like from in town, just to bring them on base to meet guys?
No, all of that happened subsequent to the movie Top Gun coming out. Okay. That's when the whole inflow of what I'd call strange women showed up, meaning women from out of town. You know, yeah. Many of the women that we met in the O Club, you know, you got to be friends with. There were local girls that just liked hanging around the Navy guys, and it was it was no great big orgy like the movie made it out to be. It was just people drinking and having fun.
Yeah.
But that was before I personally, you know, destroyed the United States Navy. But I'll tell you about that in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
But
well,
so we went through the class, and it was a great class. It was very difficult, and then flew home, and as usual, I was tired.
And then you came back, and so now we get to the movie, because a lot of people have been asking in the chat about the final countdown. So right. They tell you, hey, here's a good deal for you after you've learned all these tactics that you now will not need.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. How did that progress, and kind of, did you volunteer or were you voluntold?
I was voluntold. So that's what normally happened. So yeah, the producer of the movie was Peter Douglas. So, you know, Kirk Douglas, you know, he was the guy in the Viking, the older guy. He ended up playing the captain of Nimitz in the movie. But his son, who actually had a couple of cameo appearances in the movie, but you probably wouldn't have noticed them because you weren't looking for him. But his son, Peter, was the one who actually produced it, I'm sure using his dad's money. And, you know, they came up with this script of F-14s, you know, the story going back in time and, you know, destroying would they have successfully destroyed the Japanese fleet? But making that movie, again, a very frustrating thing, because the camera platform that we had to work with was a helicopter. Mm-hmm. So, and the Zeros were actually T-6s. Mm-hmm. So the T-6 wants to fly tops, maybe 130 knots. And it's got that canopy that slides open. So they want the the Japanese actors to look cool, with their white scarf out. So they wanted their canopies. So this is, when I say they, I mean the producers of the movie. So they wanted the canopies open. The F-14s look cool with the wings back.
Right.
But the wings, when they're going slow, the wings are supposed to be out. The wings back is only for very, very fast. So they couldn't photograph us very, very fast. So they told us to put the wings back when we were very, very slow. So we just fell out of the air for the first couple of days, and it was a mess, So we kind of worked. So we started working with that, cooperating with them. One of the biggest problems was that those were the film days. Those were not the digital movie days.
Right.
So we would fly down in Key West. We'd go back to the hotel. No film to look at. The film had to be flown to New York and developed, and then flown back in a Learjet. So we would fly on a Monday. You would see that film on Thursday.
Oh.
In the meantime, you have flown Monday and Tuesday, and you don't know what you got. And then Wednesday, and you don't know what you got. And then finally Thursday shows up, and you're looking at that film of blue skies and a cloud and an occasional, it was terrible. It was just awful. So we had to kind of redo the whole thing, the whole idea. And the way that they did that was, rather, the camera platform was a helicopter. So it was like trying to get 3 pool balls to hit on the table at the same time. The helicopter stationary, the F-14s are doing 300 knots, and the T-6s are doing like 130. So everybody's going at a different speed. You couldn't get them all in front of the camera at the one time. So what they did was they got rid of the helicopter, and they brought in an old B-25 bomber.
Oh, okay.
And they reconfigured the rear gun platform as a camera platform. So now the B-25 and the T-6s are same speed. So they flew as a formation, and then the F-14s would go through that formation. So that gave guys, much later on, like guys that with call signs like, mover, for example, they could make a let's trash the movie film that I remember that I saw you the first time, and you and whoever you were working with at the time was making fun of all of our attempts to shoot down these things. I sent you an email and I said, hey pal, if you want to know what really happened, give me a call.
Yeah. Well, so how challenging was that? I mean, you're trying to slow down behind these aircraft, and there's even one scene where we were talking about it. I mean, you're getting pretty low to that water. So were you always the wingman, or were you the flight lead sometimes? Did you switch back and forth between days? How was that set up?
No, we tried to stay with the same roles because we didn't want to waste any more time or fuel. We didn't want to be introducing new people into the equation. We were trying to get everyone to do the right thing. And then once you did it right once in one role, then we tried to keep you there. So I was the 203 pilot for the first part of the production. And then 201 was flown by a great friend of mine, a guy named Fox Farrell, who, God rest his soul, is not with us anymore, but he was a terrific pilot, and he was the one that kind of lost at that time, and you got the cat screaming noise, and it looked like he almost went into the water.
So the cat screaming noise, for the people at home, everybody thinks that's a woman screaming. So is it actually a cat?
That's what I was told by one of the sound guys later, but that was a lot later, when in what they call post-production. That's when they fill in and smooth out all the things. And he said, yeah, they had accidentally come across a sound of it was either, I don't know if it was a house cat or like a big cat, like a tiger or something, but there was a screaming noise that they had on their recording system, and they dubbed that in as the F-14 noise. And I was right above it. I saw the whole thing, and I thought, man, that doesn't look good. But anyway, Fox was a great pilot, and he pulled it off. So that was that. And there was another thing that happened. I don't know if you remember this scene where there's a close-up view of the F-14 nose, and the refueling probe comes out. And it was big, very, very close up scene.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes, and they filmed that like 8 times back and forth. So on that day, my wife went down to Key West for, a part of that time, not a lot of it, but, I've been gone so much, I said, hey, come on down, honey, at least we'll spend a little time together. So we're walking out to the airplane, out to the F-14, and the B-25 airplane is sitting there, so the pilot, slides open the window and he says, hey, Shoes, who's the babe? I said, that's my wife. You think she wants to see what the inside of this old bomber looks like? I said, you want to go in the bomber? Yeah, see what it looks like? And she goes, well, I guess so. So they open this sort of a hatch on the bottom, and she walks underneath the airplane, like 4 sets of arms go down, and she goes woof, right into the plane. They just grabbed her by the hand, pulled her right up. And I'd say, I don't know, how long would it be to get off the ground and all that? Like maybe 35, 40 minutes later, she's in the bomber.
Nice.
I'm in the F-14, and she's in that waist gunner, kind of position. And I'm like 4 feet from her in the Tomcat going, hi, babe, how you doing? As we're flying along, it was awesome. Surreal. Your wife never gets to see, what you do in the airplanes. So that was cool. And then, so we finished the scene, and then the tail gunner guy, he starts sticking his foot out the back of the airplane in the airstream. He's got a gunner's belt on. He's sticking his toe out, and he's going like this. And what he wants me to do is he wants me to put the refueling probe out, and then he wants to touch it with his toe. No, you can't make this shit up. You can't move her. You cannot make this up. So he had a pair of sneakers on and a pair of shorts. It's down in Key West, and he wants to touch my refueling probe with his foot. And I'm going, I couldn't talk to him. I could talk to the cockpit crew, but I couldn't talk to him. He's on like an interphone or something. And I'm shaking my head, I'm trying to explain to him through the cockpit. I said, look, at night when you in-flight refuel, right before that probe goes into the basket, there is a static electric charge, that's about this long that goes from the probe to the basket. So his foot is going to get about 20,000 volts, Well, the guy says, they relay back to me. Guy says he doesn't care. He just wants to be able to say that he did it, So I'm sitting there, I go back to Cornell days, and I'm thinking, okay, well, it's really high volts, but it's low amps, so it probably won't kill him. So I swear to God, I push up the thing, his toe goes out, and he just goes flying back up into the airplane, like, so he got a big shock through his foot. You can't make it up.
Wow.
But he was fine, and my wife was in the airplane, saw the whole thing. It was just the craziest thing.
Wow. Well, do you think the Tomcat would fare well against the Japanese Zeros if you had to do it in real life?
We wouldn't get anywhere near them. We'd be blowing them out of the sky from miles away with various kinds of missiles. The only problem with that kind of war, like a Phoenix missile probably cost in those dollars like $40 or $50 million for the missile, and the Japanese airplane probably cost about $19.32. So it was a bad way to wage a war.
Oh wow! So you did a missile shoot though, right? As part of that, you guys went out and actually shot some missiles.
Yeah, I was the guy that gunned the Zero, and Fox was the guy that shot the Winder.
What did you gun?
I can't remember. It was a target. So obviously we didn't shoot down the T6, but I don't know. We probably had a tow airplane with a sleeve or something like that. Just to keep us in the right position. I can't really remember, but so I gunned the imaginary Zero, and Fox shot the other one down with the Winder. So it was fun.
So for your troubles, did the Navy go, hey, here's your medal, good job? Or is it one of those things that the best you could do is break even, and then it's like, get back to work?
It was pretty much get back to work. But when remember, there's quite a delay before the movie actually came out. And, you know, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't great, but it wasn't a terrible movie. And the Navy got a lot of good publicity out of it. The recruiting command, Navy recruiting command loved it because they got a bunch of guys signing up to be F-14 pilots. Excuse me. So generally, the response from the Navy was favorable. But as time went on, some other things came up that, you know, I'd really rather not get into it. First of all, it's not very interesting, but it had to do with the accounting of the flight hours and the fuel and so forth. There was a disparity and there was some bad blood, but there's no point in getting into that. But what I think the movie did do was it set the stage for the movie Top Gun.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the blockbuster movie for Navy recruiting, but it also, in other ways, I mean, it completely destroyed the Tailhook Association.
Yeah, yeah.
And I hate to say this, and you'll think I'm lying again, but I didn't lie the first time, and you can't make this up. But the Top Gun movie was my fault. I mean, it was just all my fault. And so let me tell you the story.
Oh, I got to hear this now. How's this your fault?
All right, so now let's fast forward. So I've been to the Indian Ocean. I've been at sea for 147 days. I finally get my orders, so I get ordered back to Top Gun as an instructor. So I go back to Top Gun and I'm doing the class stuff and all of that. So one day I come up the ladder, which you would call a stairwell, and I walk down the passageway, which you would call a hall. So I'm walking down there, and I walk past the skipper's office, a guy named Ernie Christensen, former Blue Angel, great guy. So I walk by his door, and I'm about 2 steps past when I hear, "Shoes, get back here." So I turn around, I stick my head in the door, and there's this kind of weird-looking guy sitting in front of the skipper's desk. And he introduces himself to me as Ehud Yane. So obviously, he's Israeli. You know, I think he's got the little yarmulke with a hair clip thing, you know, and I'm thinking, okay, so this is one of those Israeli secret agent guys, you know, and he's going to kill me with something. You know, that was my first thought. No, it turns out that this Ehud Yane was a freelance writer for a magazine called California Magazine. And he had somehow managed, and I don't know how he did this, he managed to get his ejection seat qual, his pressure chamber qual, his parachute drag. He got all his tickets punched, and I don't know how. So the skipper, Ratchet was his call sign, he says, "All right, Shoes, so put him in the back seat of the F5F, and he wants to film, you know, whatever you do with the class." So I actually, rather than we normally went out over the ocean, I took him over Salton Sea, you know, going over towards Yuma to get some
mountains and
stuff back there. The guy walks out to the airplane, and he's got like 3 cameras with telescopic lenses about this big. And I said, "Dude, I hate to tell you, man,
it's not going to work.
We're going to be at 7Gs. Those cameras are going to weigh about 300 pounds a piece, and you're not going to get one photograph." He says, "I don't care. I want to, you know, I got to get this." So up we go, and that's exactly what happened. He didn't get one shot. Comes back drenched and, you know, covered in sweat and all that. But he writes an article called in California Magazine, and there was a little insert in there about flying with me, and he called it the agony and the agony. He'd never been under G before, you know. Yeah. But anyway, he did a lot of work about the class and everything else, and that article was read by Paramount, someone from Paramount Pictures. So that became the inspiration for the initial screenplay of the Top Gun movie. But by the time they were ready to screen that, I had left Top Gun. I wasn't there anymore. In fact, I was in the reserves when that was actually filmed. So I didn't have anything to do with the actual film of the movie, but taking the freelance writer for a ride, that was my fault. And as a result, you know, we destroyed the Top Gun Association, you know, because before the Tailhook, have you been to Tailhook? You ever been out to a Tailhook reunion? I'll sneak in. So when I was in the Navy in the late 80s, going to the O Club and, you know, flying hard, the Officers Club wasn't about women, honestly. The officers club was about drinking. It was guys telling stories, and there was the occasional woman. I'm talking about the tailhook reunion now. I'm sorry, I should make that clear, not the O Club, but the tailhook reunion. We were in the Las Vegas Hilton, and it was like 1,200 pilots and maybe 12 women, and they were there in some professional capacity, perhaps to be morale officers or something. So, but it was really about drinking. So after that movie came out, after the Tom Cruise thing and everything else, it all changed. And now all of a sudden it was like, 1,200 guys and 700 women who saw the movie.
Yeah.
And, the whole thing just went to hell. The gauntlet thing, all of that, it was a test, and it wasn't about drinking anymore. It was about women. And by that time, there were a number of female Navy pilots, and they were rightly so. They were offended by some of the things that went on. So that just became a big problem for the Navy for a while. Wow. And it's all my fault. If I'd have flown straight into the Salton Sea with that Ehud Yane guy in the back seat, none of it would have happened.
Well, I don't know if you can really take that much responsibility for that. But okay, let's go back to the flying stuff, because you did fly a whole bunch of cool aircraft. The F-5, transitioning from the Tomcat, how did you like that F-5? It's pretty different than flying the Tomcat.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it. It's a little scooter, it's a little race car. Also, I hate to, no offense to any Rios out there, but I did like flying the airplane by myself. I did. There was nobody in the back seat, and it keeps the noise down in the cockpit. We also had 2-seat F-5s, the F-5F. So we flew with Rios on some days, and on other days we flew the F-5E, which is a pure single-seater. And I loved that little airplane. It was great. It was a good training airplane to fly. But it required some finesse compared to the Tomcat. Tomcat was that first point and shoot. The F-14 was pretty awesome. But after that, if you flew a smart fight in the F-5, you could give an F-14 a very bad time.
Yeah.
And of course, in the A-4 was even worse. But that was a huge learning curve for me and everybody else. But I like the F-5.
So from Top Gun as an instructor, is that where you went to the reserves after that, or did you actually have another assignment before you decided?
Well, I was actually at Top Gun for three full years, and for the last half of that, I was Top Gun training. So I even brought my Top Gun hat. So
nice.
Just so you don't think that I'm lying to you.
Yeah, the hat is definitely what tells the tale. Yeah. They don't give the hat to just anybody.
No, that's the Top Gun patch. So there you go. But yeah, that was extremely challenging. It was exhausting. I never worked so hard in my life. It's just 12-hour day after 13-hour day with a dead every weekend to go to different places and either share the information or share the adversary airplanes. At the end of those 3 years, I couldn't even think about going back to the fleet. I was physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted. I was just wrung out. It takes so much out of you. And the Top Gun training officer runs the class. So, I was responsible for scheduling all of the squadrons throughout the Navy to get their quotas, to come into the class. And then, of course, I had a tremendous amount of help from the other Top Gun bros that were there. But it was kind of on me to make sure that it worked and that we kept the standard, the way we needed it to be. So it was an exhausting, but it was, I don't know, probably the most rewarding thing I ever did. But at the end of it, I was just done. And the thought of going back to the fleet, I just couldn't face it. Yeah. So, and also I should add, my very, loyal and, kind of long suffering wife, at that point, we had one child by that stage, and we'd been married for, I don't know how many years, but we'd been together like a total of, like 11 months or something out of 4 or 5 years. So yeah, maybe it wasn't quite that bad. I just kind of shotgunned that. I'm not really sure if that's exactly true, but you know, she never really gave me the ultimatum, like either you get out or I'm leaving. But it was pretty obvious that we were not going to be able to stay married if I went back to a ship and then did 2 back-to-back cruises like I did on my last deployment. So I got out, and I flew in the reserves, and then I got picked up by FedEx, and you know, I had the dream career. You know, it just flew airplanes like crazy, went all over the world, and had a great job at FedEx. And now I've got a good retirement. So
yeah, wow.
Can't say enough good things about aviation. For if anyone is still listening to this diatribe, I'm sure I've gone too long.
There's a few, yeah.
Well, it's a great, you know, it's just a great profession.
Yeah,
that's all I can say about it.
Did you fly for FedEx while you were in the reserves? Did you do both jobs? Did you try to juggle both careers?
Yeah, I even commuted for a while. We had a house in Norfolk, so I lived at the Guard, or at the reserves, as you would say, and commuted to Memphis to get my flights. And then I flipped that around. We moved to Memphis, and then I commuted to the reserves. But do you guys have drill weekend?
Mm-hmm.
You're familiar with that term,
yep,
right?
Yep.
So let's say that your airline schedule you're going to fly 2 weekends, you're going to have 2 weekends off. Well, one of those 2 off weekends is drill weekend, because you got to schedule around the Guard, right, or the reserves. So you're going to get 1 weekend off out of 4. And by that time, we had 2 kids, and you know, they wondered who I was. They thought I was a friend of their mother.
Who's this guy?
Yeah, passed through the house every couple of weeks, you know. So it just got to be too much, you know. I just couldn't do it.
What'd you fly at FedEx?
I flew, started out in the 727, which was an old airplane, but a very good airplane. I was only on that for about 2 years, I think. And then I went to the MD-11, which was FedEx's first glass cockpit wide body airplane.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I loved that airplane. I was on that thing for 17 years. And then I went to the 777 for my last 2 years at FedEx, and retired off the triple.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was a line check airman. I was an IOE guy. I was a simulator instructor. I was in flight standards. I kept moving around just to stay interested, but it's a great company. I got nothing but great things to say about FedEx. Fantastic.
And you retired from that as well?
Yeah, retired at 58.
Oh, wow.
From FedEx. And now I have this little company in Memphis that does training mainly for the Air Force.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you do any flying still?
Yeah, I also have a flight school that my second son now owns. But we have a location here in Memphis, and we also have a location in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, at Fort Lauderdale Executive Airport. And I've got an aerobatic biplane called a Great Lakes, and I do upset prevention, recovery training, and
cool.
Aerobatic intro, and all that kind of stuff. I do that in the biplane when I've got time.
We'll definitely leave links to all the schools and stuff so people can check it out.
Sure.
In the description and stuff. But so as we wrap this up, I've gone way over time, and I apologize, but this has just been so interesting.
I think I went over time.
No, this has been just gold. It's great stuff. What advice? You've already basically told the make them tell you no story, so I won't ask you that one. But if you had to tell somebody who's watching this, who's thinking, I want to be a fighter pilot one day, what advice would you give them just going out the gate? And how to be successful, and how to achieve what you've achieved in your career?
Well, I think the first thing you have to ask the question, it's going to take sacrifice. You're going to be studying long hours. You're going to be working your body hard. You've got to want it. I mean, you've just really got to want it. If you're on the fence as to, you know, do I want to fly fighters or do I want to fly something else, some goofy ass airplane. You know, I'm a hardcore fighter guy. So if that's the case, if you're not really sure you want it, I would approach it cautiously. But if you want it, you're going to have to put everything into it in the beginning. But as time goes on and you transition from active duty to the Guard or the reserves, you get some of the ice cream. You know, you get some of the more enjoyable things to do, and all of that. But if you haven't done your homework and you haven't established yourself as a very, very competent fighter pilot in your early years, then you're not going to get a job at the Guard or the Reserves. Your reputation will precede you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
So it's a huge commitment, but to me, it's a very, very rewarding profession. And if you want it, go get it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Do you have time for a couple questions? I know I've kept you so long, but do you have time for a couple questions from the people watching this? There's quite a few.
Well, the first question I have for them is, how did you stay awake this long? But, yeah,
sure. Someone asked a Catherine Ross story. They said, tell the Catherine Ross story. Is there a Catherine Ross story?
Well, Catherine Ross was she played the female lead in the Final Countdown movie. And so she was the babe that was on that little boat that got blown up and everything.
Yeah.
Charlie.
I kept calling her Mary Ann because it looked like Gilligan's Island, but go on.
Yeah. And Charlie was supposed to be her dog and all of that.
Yeah.
She did not like us, man. She just didn't like us. We were making so much. We were flying over that boat like 8 times a day, as low and as fast as we could. I think we gave her permanent hearing loss.
America. It's the sound of freedom.
Yep. Tomcat.
Tomcats.
Tomcats. So anyway, we get back to the hotel and the rest of the crew would be there and she'd be nowhere. You know, she had her boyfriend down there. She'd be up in her room and we never did get to see her. But I don't think she enjoyed the whole Navy show that much, honestly.
Wow.
I wish I had a better story for you, but that's
still, I mean, Tomcats flying over. I mean, I would appreciate that, but I'm different. How did you get your call sign?
So in my first squadron, unlike the Air Force, Navy guys actually have a job. If the Air Force guys just fly, you don't have a job.
Don't be hating. I don't know why you're hating. We got tactics to do. We're not worried about landing. We go out and actually fight wars. It's not about landing.
Look, man, you're so full of it. You just hang around the squadron bar. That's all you do and wait for your next flight. We actually have a job. I was the first lieutenant, which sounds like it's a big deal. It's not. It's the worst job on the ship. Yeah, I had 30 sailors, enlisted sailors that worked for me. And our job was to clean the berthing spaces and clean the heads and do all of that.
So you were a janitor.
Yeah, janitor. I was a janitor. So
janitor.
The senior enlisted guy, to play a joke on me, he went into the paraloft. I don't know what you guys call it, but he went into where we keep our flight gear, and he got a hold of my flight boots and spray painted them gloss white.
Oh.
And that was, so now it's time for me to go flying, and there's no other boots in there because he was smart enough to take them all out of there. So now I got to get up to the airplane. So I go up to the airplane on the deck of Nimitz, and I'm trying to climb into the airplane, and I look up at Pryfly, the tower, and all I can see is like 8 pairs of binoculars. What is that guy? So I was out in these white boots. And there was a football player at the time called Billy White Shoes Johnson.
Yeah.
He was a kick returner.
Mm-hmm.
So I became White Shoes and then later shortened to Shoes. So that's not a good story.
That's a great story. And you owe it to the guy for painting your shoes. That is awesome. So the question of actually 3 people just asked this: how prevalent were engine stalls in the early Tomcats? That was a big thing. We talked about that a little bit. I mean,
the problem when that would come up is actually on the deselection of burner.
Mm-hmm.
So if the airplane was in afterburner and you kind of left it there, the engines generally wouldn't stall. That's the good news. The bad news is you'd have to walk home because you'd run out of gas. So at some point, but again, it's all technique. You just got to get the air going straight into the intakes when you deselect burner, and it wasn't that bad. But again, it required some pilot technique, and if you didn't get it just right, you'd get the puff bang thing, and the plane would want to go sideways and spin and so on. So then you got to get the other engine back to completely back to idle. So it was a trick, and it did happen. And
did you ever spin one?
No, I got close several times. We actually had a yaw string on the nose. If you know what that is.
I saw it in the movie. Yeah,
yeah,
pretty cool. You could see it very easily. Yeah.
Right. So the secret of the Tomcat was if you tried to force it to do something or to not do something, it would punish you. If you encouraged it not to do something or do something, it would honor your request. So what I mean by that is, as soon as the nose you're in that pre-spin routine where the yaw string goes out to the right, let's say, and the nose is starting to come around to the left, you need to ask it with your right foot, with just a little bit of right rudder and a little bit of forward stick, ask it to stop doing that shit because it's scaring it. So, and if you did that, more times than not, it wouldn't spin. But occasionally, it never happened to me, but occasionally it would.
Did you guys have to just recite departure spin in every brief like we did in the Navy? We used to have to rattle off the boldface for departure spin. Do you still remember the Tomcat departure spin stuff?
I don't remember the Tomcat one, but I flew the A4 for a lot of years in the reserves and so on. And so A4 is neutralized, throttle back, lock the harness, check trim 0 to 4, look for a stuck slat, flaps up with their down. Upright spin is stick into rudder opposite, inverted spin is opposite, 10,000 feet eject.
Yeah, the F5's like that too. It's like 40 steps. It's crazy. What is your scariest moment in a fighter? Or anything. If you got a really scary story in an MD-11, I'll take that too.
Boy, we'll be here the rest of the night if I tell all my scary stories.
Just one. We'll just pick the scariest one.
All right, so let's go back to the F5. So I'm brand new at Top Gun. I'm on my FAM 4. So that's familiarization phase. So I'm in the F5E. So obviously I'm by myself. And they said, okay, just go fly it, have a good time. Can't hurt you. It's a great airplane. It'll just, just take care of you. It'll be just fine. Go have fun. Oh, by the way, it has this little thing called inverted pitch hang up. And that means when you go over the top onto your back, all of a sudden the nose will start wanting to go the other way. Ooh. And that had to do with the maneuvering. Remember, that airplane had maneuvering slats, not slats, maneuvering flaps and trailing edge flaps.
Right.
So whoever was the duty officer that day says, see if you can get it to do that. And then get out of it, So I'm out there. I'm by myself for, I think, maybe the first or second time in the airplane. I'm off the coast of Mexico. Did you ever fly down there around the Mexican border?
Yeah.
Out of Miramar. There's a bull ring down there at a little town called I think it's Ensenada, and there's a bull ring there. So anyway, I'm playing around with the F5 that can't possibly hurt me. I come back over the top. The nose just stops coming down, and the airplane just starts to kind of fall like a leaf. And then it picks up a little bit of yaw rate, and it just starts marching around, inverted spin, very, very comfortable, though, if you can believe it or not, about minus half a G. So I go through the procedure, which is flaps up, maneuvering flaps, and all the flaps up, and stick full aft. So I'm doing that. I went into this thing at about 23,000 feet, 21,000 feet, the bull ring goes by. 17,000 feet, the bull ring goes by, and I'm just in this flat spin, just going down, and the plane is as happy as it can possibly be. You can tell when a plane is stable. So, it's at 10,000 feet, it's a mandatory ejection, so going through like 17, I'm thinking, man, I just got to Top Gun. This is my FAM 3. I'm going to put this thing in the Pacific Ocean, and they're not going to think a lot of me. I'm not off to a good start. I'm in a flat
spin, headed out to sea.
So anyway, but again, this is all your training. This is everything. There's no point getting excited in an airplane. You just got to be cool. You got to be cool. And I was saying, all right, so are the flaps up? Yes, they are. Is the stick back? Yes, it is. what else can you possibly do? And I'm thinking, well, every other airplane I ever flew, the rudder is supposed to go opposite the direction of spin. That's not in our boldface. So I said, well, I'm going to be a test pilot today because now I'm passing through 13,000 feet, and in about 4 seconds, I'm going to be out of this thing. So I went opposite rudder, and as soon as I did, it was like an ice skater pulling her arms in. They go,
yeah.
they do that real quick thing. The airplane, the nose went down, the whole airplane just went like that. And I kind of popped out the bottom of the thing at about 6,000 feet. With, oh, Jesus Christ, this is not good. But it was great. And anyway, so what do you do when you have a very unusual experience like that? You don't tell a soul. That's what in the Navy, because I figured I must have done something wrong. Well, about a year later, and this is a great story. About a year later, we get a call in the squadron from the base ops or something. They said, hey guys, we hate to tell you, but your skipper's in the ocean. And I said, oh, really? Yeah, he said, we got a pinger on him. We got helicopters going out there, but you've lost an airplane and it's out in the water. It's 541 is we could tell from the squawk. So he said, oh man, okay, well, there's nothing we can do, right? So we just wait to get further word, So sure enough, they get a helicopter out there. They pick up the skipper. They take him back to the base infirmary, and they put him down and they're examining that and all that. And we get the word back. He's okay. He's breathing. No serious injuries. So, this only happens in the military, man, but you just got to believe it. So somebody finds the little model on the stick for 41, and they run to the you call it the PX, we call it the exchange. He runs to the exchange and he buys a fish tank, and he puts the fish tank on the skipper's desk, and then he takes that little bubble hose, he puts it up the tailpipe, and then the F5 is lying upside down in the fish tank with the bubbles coming out of it. It was the right number, the one he just cracked.
Yeah.
So he shows up back at his office about 45 minutes or an hour later, and he just walks in the door and shakes his head. You guys have no mercy.
God.
No mercy. Wow. So, but it was exactly the same thing. It was, he just didn't. I had a lot. I went into mine at 23,000, so I had a fair amount of time to figure it out. He was in a rolling scissors with an F4 or something. He went into his at 16,000. He got about a turn and a half, and he's already at 10, so he jumped out, which was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I was just really lucky. I had a lot more time to think about it.
Wow. So, that's awesome. That's a great story. And another story people are asking about is on our title card, there's a Vulcan. What is the story with you escorting that Vulcan?
Yeah, and we haven't even gotten to me tearing the main landing gear doors.
Oh, yes. Yes. See, I skipped up. We got so enamored. Okay, you got a cue now. We got the gear doors and the Vulcan and the 400 knot splash into the water. I'm curious about that.
Yeah. All right. Well, which one do you want to start with? They're all true.
The bomber. We'll start with the bomber.
Okay. So I'm on alert 5. Okay. Alert 5, you're in the airplane with all your gear on. Alert 15, you're in the ready room with your gear on. Alert 30, you can be in your room. So I'm in alert 5. So I'm in the airplane. It's on the catapult. And then we get the announcement on the big ship thing, launch the alert 5. So we fire up the airplane. And we've got a data link target that's like up and left about 34 miles away, but at about 26,000 feet. No idea what it is. So we go screaming down, blowers going hard, big left turn. We roll out of the turn and we get a target on our TID, our tactical information display, and it's right on top of the ship's data link target. So this is a sweet system. Everything's working right. I'm thinking, I don't know, some kind of bomber, somebody trying to destroy the ship. I really don't know what. But I'm in a Rutowski climb, right? So we're going to go, we're going to climb in full blower to 22,000. We're going to unload. We're going to get to about Mach 1.2. We're going to pick it up. And then here in the HUD, I see this thing coming towards us with blue sky behind it. And it's got a cranked wing form like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the ship is going crazy, saying, what is it? What is it? So I said to my Rio, Ed Miller, the guy was behind me, said, Ed, I don't know how to say this, but it looks like the space shuttle, dude. Well, the space shuttle hadn't flown yet, but we'd seen pictures of it in Aviation Week and all that. It looked just like the space shuttle from the bottom. So anyway, so here I come, but underneath hook, pick the guy up, roll over next to him, perfect intercept. And once I get a look at the side of it, I was kind of a James Bond fan. I go, oh no, that's a Vulcan bomber. That's what it is. But if you think about that cranked wing, it's just like the space shuttle, from the bottom. So I join up on the guy, and it's got that little porthole thing. I finally get his attention. He had no idea I was there. So I go, 3333 over UHF chat. So I get him to come up on UHF. And I said, hey, pal, the Nimitz is out there about 12 or 15 miles. If you want to go down and do a flyover, I'll call the squadron, get some cameras out there, and I'll send you the pictures later. And this Brit guy says, oh, I'll just put down my egg sandwich and we'll do that. No shit, you can't make this up. He's up there eating an egg sandwich. He has no idea that he's like seconds from death. I was about to blow him out of the air.
He's eating an egg sandwich.
He's eating an egg sandwich, So he goes down. We do some low passes. He goes back to, he was flying out of Lisbon. And so we sent him a bunch of pictures later when we were in Portsmouth later on. But it was so much fun, it was just my adrenaline was huge.
So, awesome.
So what was the other one you were asking?
Gear doors. Right. You were put you were jailed for gear doors.
I was jailed. So we're in Rhoda on our mid-cruise stand down. A couple things happened. So the whole, so there's a charter flight in the middle of cruise that takes all the senior guys back home so they can be with their wives and kids. Ensign Mullen or whatever I was, Lieutenant J.G. Mullen at the time, I get to stay in Rhoda with the ship and all the other junior guys. So they decide that the stand down is so long, we each need to get 2 flights. Otherwise, we're not going to be legal to do our first trap, So somebody comes back with this great idea. And they said, all right, Shoes, here's what's going to happen. We got this worked out. We're going to take an airplane and we're going to put you in it in one of the Rios, and we're going to launch you from anchor. So there's no wind over the deck. And I said, I don't think that's possible. They said, no, we've looked in the book and it's good. So off you go. So they load me up in, I even remember the airplane, it was 205 with this Rio. So the hardest cat shot ever had, boom, and it flings us off the deck. So we have enough end speed to fly. And so now we got 16,000 pounds of fuel in the airplane, and I need to land at the airport that's like 5 miles behind us. So I said, all right, how fast can this thing go? Let's just see. So I get to 50 feet on the radio altimeter, and I can see it in the HUD. I got the thing in zone 5 afterburner, and the speed's going up, and it's going up. But I'm just worried about the altitude because I am a blink away from a wave or something. I'm just, but the thing is hauling. We top out at 840 knots indicated. That's how fast this thing is.
At 50 feet.
At 50 feet. So of course there's a great big rooster tail that I can see in the mirrors. And the Rio says to me, hey, Shoes, look out for boats, man. There's a big trawler or something off to the left. And I hadn't even thought about that. So I look over my left shoulder, and there's this big trawler about a mile or 2 away. So I said, well, shit, if there's somebody over there, I wonder what's in front of us. Because I hadn't looked, I was on the gauges. So I look out the front, and there's this little rowboat thing, and with a fisherman in it, and he's got a bait net. And he's getting ready to throw it into the water, but he's facing the other way. So I'm looking at his back. So this takes, your mind works pretty quick. This takes about like 3/100ths of a second for him to go under the nose. He has no idea we're there. We're Mach 1.25 or something now. It says 740 knots with this big rooster tail. And he's throwing his little bait net, and I go past them, and like a split second later, there's this this sonic boom. So anyway, I don't know what happened to the guy. We read the newspapers later. We couldn't figure it out. But anyway, we go back, we land the airplane in Rota, now to the second part of the story, which is the whole landing gear thing. So on the ship, and I'll try, I know we've been here a long time, so I'll try and get through this quickly. But
no, take your time. We got all the time you need.
All right. So on the ship, when you in the F-14, you never put your helmet into the headrest to take the cat shot, because the first thing the airplane did was to go down, when the launch bar would bottom out on the deck. So that would kind of knock your head forward anyway. And then when the cat fired, that would knock your head back. So that was a bad move. So you just kind of held your head forward. So you'd get thrown down the catapult, and when the cat let you go, your upper body just kind of naturally went like that, because you were fighting all that acceleration, so it would pop forward, and you would just use that to catch the landing gear handle on the way back. So go down, the cat lets you go, gear up. Cat lets you go, gear up. You do that for 5 months. That's kind of a pattern, right? Mm-hmm. So now we're going to fly the airplane for the first time off the land in about 5 months. So it's my turn to do my little flight. So I go out there, I man the thing up, I'm going down the runway. The guy in front of me was a two-ship, this Fox guy that I told you earlier. So he calls for like a 15-second flight leader SEP, which is a long time, not sure what he's talking about. No other brief than that. So off he goes, beautiful low transition. And don't do it, Mav. Don't do it, Mav. He goes around the tower, and I go, wow, that wasn't briefed. Okay, here we go. There's my 15 seconds. So I stuff it, burner, off I go, low transition, looking at the tower. Here we go. We're just not accelerating like we should. And then it dawns on me, I'm on the ground, I'm on a runway for the first time in 5 months, and the cat hasn't let me go. So I haven't put the gear up. So, and I'm going, so I got two little neurons, in my mind. and it's a race, so the first neuron is trying to get to the cerebral cortex that makes the decision. And that little one is saying, you better pull back the throttle or you're going to overspeed the gear. And the other one on it's got the thing that says it's better to die than look bad. So they're in a race. Next thing I know, it was a waste of time. Next thing I know, the hydraulic fail light comes off. I put the gear up somewhere, landing gear doors depart the airplane. That takes the hinges and, all the valves and all the fluid and all that shit. So now I've got a utility hydraulic failure, and, the gear's half down and half up. So anyway, I get it back down. So, about that time, the adult supervision shows up and says, okay, you're in hack. So, hack is like, it's like house arrest, so I was in hack for quite a while for tearing the gear off the airplane. But
wow.
And the Navy was mad because, Rota Harbor's down here, and that's where the carrier is. So that's where all the parts are. And the plane's up here at the air station. So getting the parts there was no problem. But as you know, and anyone in aviation knows, if you got a landing gear thing, after the repair is done, they have to put the thing on jacks and swing the gear. Well, the jacks each weigh about a half a ton for an F-14, and you need 3 of them, and they're in the ship. So the Navy had to hire a truck, a tug, a crane, crane the jacks off the ship, bring it back, crane it off the tug onto the truck to the top of the thing, swing the gear, do the whole thing around. So it probably cost the Navy, I don't know, $750,000 or something, because knucklehead Mullen ripped the gear off. And so they, house arrest. That's the way it was.
Wow. That is another great, God, you got so many great stories. So what is the story of the 400-knot splash into the water picture?
Oh, yeah, that's a different thing. So, but now this is my last cruise. We're over off the coast of Iran. We were at sea for 147 days. It's kind of boring. So, just to kind of keep myself interested, I decided to try and get my OOD qual, officer of the deck, underway. So I'm standing bridge watches now and kind of driving the boat. Now the captain's sitting right there, you know, but he liked me to do the rendezvous with oilers and stuff like that because, you know, pilots are more aggressive than surface pukes. You know, we're just better at everything. But so yeah, anyway, so our sister squadron, VF-41, they had gotten a new guy. A new guy came out from Diego Garcia on an S3 just the day before, and we'd met him. I don't remember his name. But anyway, so I'm kind of looking out the window, and I see him get in the airplane. He's a pilot, and into the back seat goes one of my really, really good friends from our sister squadron from 41, a guy named Skip Zobel, just fabulous guy. So anyway, I'm driving the boat. They're out for an hour. They come back, and I see the airplane coming into the brake, normal brake. That looks fine. Brake left, and all of a sudden the nose goes down, you know. And the air boss says, F-14 to brake, watch your bank angle, you know, or something like that. Watch your altitude, watch your attitude, watch out. Boom, into the water. They just flew into the water, as you know, at 400 knots or something. That's what that big splash is. And right before it went into the water, I saw a spark, you know, out there somewhere. So I'm thinking that might have been an ejection seat. Maybe one guy got out, you know, but anyway, so I'm driving the boat. It takes a while. You know, we're launching airplanes, so you can't like run over there and look. You got to drive the ship where it's going, and the helicopter goes out to get them. But pretty soon they're 2 miles behind. You can't see anything. And, you know, I'm not afraid to admit it. You know, I was standing there on the bridge and driving the boat, and I had tears, you know, just running down my eyes. The new guy didn't know it all, but Skip, he was just a great guy, and I'm thinking they're dead. Well, I'll be damned if 15, 20 minutes later, the helicopter comes back, lands on the angle, and they both walked out of the helicopter. Oh, so that'll show you what a Martin Baker seat. There's nothing like Martin Baker for ejection seats. I had written those guys off. I don't know how that seat got them out of there. It was a split second before they hit the water. Wow. So anyway, it was a happy sight.
Wow. Jeez. So what was your top Mach in the Tomcat? Did you actually break 2?
Yeah, I did 2.35, I think, out over the ocean. That's good.
Wow.
That was good.
Wow. Well,
you haven't even. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No.
You haven't even heard the craziest story yet.
Oh, well then, proceed, sir.
So remember when I told you that we're picking up these new airplanes from Calverton, the Block 95 F-14s? So, you know, we're flying up to Calverton, and so a lot of times we either get dropped off, we either go up on an airline and get dropped off and fly it back, or we go out in the Tomcat and pick up a lot of the documents and materials that we needed and all that. Well, while this is all going on, my mother over in Scotland has sent a dog over to my mother-in-law for my wife Donna and I, a little Westie puppy. And you know, we had 2 rules in my marriage: no kids, no dogs. So now we have kids, and then we have dogs.
Okay.
So anyway, we're trying to figure out how to get the dog down to Virginia Beach, and it was to put it on an airliner. It was Piedmont Airlines. It was like $48 for an unaccompanied dog. I didn't have $48 to waste on the dog anyway. So I thought, well, I'm going up there in a Tomcat tomorrow. We'll just stuff it in the Tomcat and bring it back. So I mean, why not, right? You know, when you're an ensign, you'll do anything, you know. So anyway, I called my mother and I said, all right, we're going to come up there and pick up the dog, the goddamn dog. And she says, well, how's it going to breathe? I said, we'll be at low altitude. It doesn't have to breathe. It'll be fine. So I said, the only thing I'm worried about is the air conditioning system, and the airplane is really, really loud. And I'm afraid it's not going to have a helmet on. I'm afraid it's going to be deaf. So anyway, I fly up there. I land at Calverton, and my mother and father are there, and they've got the dog in a milk crate. You know, like there's an upright milk crate. There's this little dog, and then there's a milk crate like this on top of it. And so I got out of the airplane for a minute, and my father says to me, well, you don't need to worry about that air conditioning noise because your mother's had the dog in the simulator all morning. What do you mean? They put this little puppy in the milk carton, put it on the living room carpet, and put a vacuum cleaner on either side of it. And the dog was that all morning. So finally, we put the dog up on the thing and flew it back to Oceana. It was fine. It was good. No problem. It spent a little 0G time kind of floating around in the box.
Wow.
Why not? Who cares? There's
wow.
no naval regulation against putting a dog in an F-14. I looked, I checked.
It doesn't say you can't do it, so obviously,
you can't do it.
Yeah. I mean, unlike the Air Force, where it's got to be written that you can. Oh, that makes sense. Wow. Now I'm just going to ask, what other stories do you have? Because you've got a ton of these, and they're awesome.
Well, they're all true. As I've told you before, I never lie to men. Anyway, the other one, so that first dog was Heather. She was the F-14 test dog. So she eventually died years later.
Not in a Tomcat, though, right?
Not in a Tomcat. No, she was fine. So I'm over in Paris on a FedEx trip, and we lost our dog, but some time has gone by, and they have beautiful Westies there. They're raised in Normandy. They gorgeous little, what a West Highland Terrier looks like. You know what I'm talking about? So anyway, this French woman goes by me with this gorgeous Westie, so I'm talking to her in my horrible French and, basically saying, where'd you get the dog? And she says, oh, there's a breeder out in Normandy. So anyway, I got a hold of their website. I ordered a dog and we got a Westie there. So got a rental car, drove her back to Paris into my hotel room on my FedEx trip. And then I'd gone to a vet and got a couple of doggy downers, so I knocked the dog out, put it in my luggage, smuggled it onto the MD-11. So that was the MD-11 test dog. So I managed to smuggle her back. So I told my wife when I got back, I said, I'm sorry, but I fell in love with a little French bitch in a cheap hotel room in Paris, which is all true.
Oh, wow.
So that was that one. Then the next dog was, that was Annabelle. She was the Cessna 310 test dog. That's how we picked her up. And the one that we have now is McGill. And I picked her up in a Diamond 42. So it's our tradition. We pick up little puppies and we terrify the shit out of them. And then they become our family dog.
Rite of passage just to go fly. And I think the Tomcat one's probably the coolest one, though.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Nobody would believe it, which is good, because if they did believe it, they'd probably arrest me. I don't know, but who cares? It was hundreds of years ago now.
Wow. Well, if you had to pick an airplane, past, present, or future, to fly, other than the Tomcat, do you have like hey, I wish I could have flown this?
Oh, that I didn't fly?
Or that you did? I mean, hell, what?
Yeah. No, if I came, when you said you were doing adversary stuff, I thought you were working for some of those private.
Oh, like Draken and ATAC.
Draken
and
all
Air
of
USA.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tell you, the plane I would love to have somehow is an F5F.
Oh, okay.
Because that's the two-seater. There's no point in having an airplane if you can't take somebody with you, right?
Right.
But I'd love to have an F5F as a great flying airplane, and that way you could take your pals and show them what jets are about. That would be my favorite.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You should have gone dog. Somebody said you should have gone dogfighting with the actual dog.
Yeah. I didn't think of that.
You could 1v1 with the dog. Well,
yeah.
Shoes, this has been my favorite interview so far. You're an amazing fighter pilot. This is, I hope it's inspired the viewers, because it has inspired me. This is what it's about to be a military aviator and a fighter pilot in general. So thank you so much for your stories, and thank you for your time, of all things. I know you're very busy and stuff. So we got to get you back for a sequel at some point, because I'm sure we're only scratching the surface with cool stuff. In fact, we'll get you on Gonki's channel, because he speaks Navy a lot better than I do.
Oh, cool. Yeah, very good.
He's actually got a channel called The Ready Room. So I'm sure he'd love to bend your ear and hear stories. But thank you so much. I appreciate it. You have any parting shots for the viewers at home before I end this?
No, but I've got one for you. You know, I told you, I think earlier this evening that, you know, I had gone and watched a lot of your YouTube stuff just to get prepared for what this was going to be like. And I'm not, you know, not, you know, kissing your butt or anything, but you're providing a service here. You know, you're providing an insight, you know, to young people that are thinking about the fantastic profession that we were lucky enough to have, and getting them interested in it and getting, you know, some of the fun things. You know, it's not a formal class. I think the recruiters, they should be, you know, they should be giving you a couple of bucks on the side or something. I don't know. But I really mean it. I like your,
Thank you.
I like what you do. I like the way you conduct the interviews. I like the way you carry yourself. And I think you do a fantastic job. And I really mean that.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And like I said, this has been an absolute honor and a privilege and just awesome. So thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who's been watching. I will upload clips because I know it's a 2-hour video. So we will break it down to clips with some more pictures. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time. Excuse me. Oh, no. Oh! Met a lot of them. Usually fine with the doors off. All hot speed. Don't be a douche. That's rule number 1. Make them tell you no.